Welcome to An Unconventional Life, a podcast where we share stories about the crazy 1% out there who earned their doctoral degrees and then went on to use them in crazy, cool, unique, and unconventional ways. Here's your host, astrophysicist turned teacher, author, dissertation coach, and more, Dr. Russell Strickland.
This is Dr. Russell Strickland here, host of An Unconventional Life podcast, where I feature the stories of the unconventional 1% who not only earned their doctoral degrees, but went on to leverage them in these strange, exciting, cool, and unconventional ways throughout their lives and their careers. Now, today I have with us Dr. David Braswell, and I've known Dr. Braswell for quite a while, and even back before he was Dr. Braswell. Dr. Braswell is currently the CEO and co-founder of UpSlope Solutions, and he has more than 36 years of experience in educational practice and research. I'm going to want to talk with Dr. Braswell about exactly how UpSlopes works with his doctoral degree here in just a minute. But for right now, I want to welcome Dr. Braswell. Thank you for being with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Coming from Phoenix, it's I'll use the term unconventionally hot for today.
If you're from anywhere else but Phoenix, right?
Yeah, yesterday it was about 3 degrees cooler, so we're supposed to get up to about 112 for today and tomorrow.
Oh, my goodness. And I remember I went out to Phoenix actually when I was in graduate school to do what they call a residency out there, and I accidentally bumped into a car in a parking lot, and I swear I think I was going to stick to it. That car was so hot. That was like Memorial Day weekend, I believe. We were tooling around the city, and the bus driver said, "Oh, it's not hot yet." It was 100 and something degrees at the time.
Yeah.
So
it gets hot, I'll tell you.
It does that. Well, I wanted to just go over our sponsor message real quick. Our episode today is brought to you by Dissertation Done. Dissertation Done helps doctoral students to get their dissertations done a good year or two faster than they typically would on their own, helping them cut through the stress, confusion, and frustration, and getting that dissertation done. Dr. Braswell, I know that you worked with Dissertation Done during your dissertation experience. Is that correct?
It is.
It is. And do you think that you might have gotten done a little bit faster working your way through it with Dissertation Done?
Not only did I get through it a little bit faster, I got through it with less stress.
Oh, and that's important.
Yeah. So
I want to tag into that a little bit later, because I know that you had a very interesting question when I asked you what the best part of graduating was, and I'm pretty sure you remember what your answer was. But I want to talk about that a little bit later when we get to it in our story. To start off with, why don't you just walk us back? We were talking before we let the cameras roll here, and Dr. Braswell's words, not mine, he called himself no spring chicken and said that I should ask him, well, why did you go back to school after you'd already been successfully running a company for a decade? Why go back to school and go through this entire process of a doctoral degree program, dissertation, all of that? So I'll put it to you, Dr. Dave, what possessed you to go get a doctoral degree at that stage in your life?
I think it was primarily the fact that I had just retired from the Arizona State Senate.
Yep.
And I thought, I don't have this political albatross around my neck now, so I think I'll finish a bucket list item.
Yes.
But primarily, I wanted to validate the solutions that my company had was producing and designing and selling quite successfully to school districts throughout the nation. And I have been doing it a little bit longer than 10 years. It's been more like 26 years. So we are an unconventionally older company. And I knew that the solutions were working because we were writing employee codes of conduct guide for school districts throughout the nation. I'm an
Well,
educator.
let's take just a really quick break, Dr. Braswell. Tell everybody about UpSlopes real quickly. You're talking about solutions, and what market do you serve and how do you help those folks?
We serve the K-12 market primarily. We have some
The
customers.
public school districts.
The public school districts, yes. We have some that are charter schools and private schools, but primarily hundreds of our districts have honored us with the opportunity to help them design and write and cross-correlate, in essence, customize a district's own employee code of conduct guide that requires identification of a community's ethics in dealing with education and those minimum expected behaviors that are required as a result of those community ethics, and then how to operationalize and use the code on a day-to-day basis for the sole purpose of creating a safe and supportive environment conducive to learning in a fair, reasonable, thoughtful, and consistent manner. I've got my stump speech down to an art.
And so what you're doing is you're helping school districts to enumerate and to elucidate the behaviors that they expect of their employees, specifically teachers, but other staff members as well, so that, and beyond those expectations, also what the consequences are when you step out of line, so that the teachers understand how they're expected to perform their duties, how they're expected to comport themselves, and what the school district will do to take steps to correct or curtail such actions as they deem inappropriate.
Yeah, that in essence is what we do.
Okay.
We also provide the platforms via a subscription service. We have written investigative software rubrics that interact with the code and the superintendent's guidelines. But what we do that's very unconventional in the arena of employee code of conduct, we really use our solutions that I was able to validate as part of my dissertation, that you know very well, in designing and shifting our value propositions so that we are modifying employee behavior without going the traditional route of punishing employees for misconduct.
Right. Okay, so that tells everybody a little bit about UpSlopes. Now back to your story about why would you decide to go back to get a doctoral degree when you're already having such success in helping these school districts?
Well, I suspected that if I could change the value proposition when I was interacting with school district superintendents throughout the nation, and I've been doing this, as I said, 26 years at the national and state level, I suspected that it would add validity to our value proposition and increase sales. And that is what has happened.
Awesome. Okay. Well, so tell me a little bit about, as I mentioned, you contacted me years ago when you were approaching the dissertation process, and you were a bit different than our typical student. Oftentimes we have students that come in and they're behind the eight ball. They have been working on their dissertation for quite a while and haven't been able to really move the ball down the field, so to speak. You came in a little bit earlier. Tell me a little bit about that decision and what made you decide to reach out at that time in the dissertation process, or before it even started, really.
Well, as a CEO and co-founder of UpSlope, I was flying 160,000 average air miles a year. I have been doing that the last 4 months, but
as we're recording this during the COVID pandemic, so that if this lasts long into the future, hopefully we'll have this behind us at some point.
Yeah. I remember telling you when I first was doing the research about the services and the solutions that you provide, that the primary reason I wanted to use a dissertation coach was to get from point A to point B in as straight a line as I could. You know, being a researcher, I just don't like the process and don't agree with it at the university level in writing dissertations. The committees do not really guide you in a logical way. It's more of a, have you thought about this? Go back and change this and come back and show us what you changed it to, and then we'll tell you if that's what we meant.
They're not. Yeah, it's very much, I tell students all the time that your last doctoral class had significantly more to do with classes you took in third grade than it does with your dissertation. In terms of the structure, when you got to third grade, they started telling you, I know my daughter is, right now as I'm recording this, is getting ready to go into fifth grade, my youngest. And so it's not that long ago that the schools started saying, we're no longer learning to read, we're reading to learn for her. And once you started reading to learn, then it's read this chapter, write a paper, well, I'll grade it. And it's that way all the way up through your last doctoral class until you get to the dissertation. And then all of a sudden they just say, have at it.
Yeah.
Enjoy, fun.
Yeah.
There's the deep end. You're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I appreciated the fact, though. See, I wanted to shift the paradigm from writing a dissertation to learn. I wanted to shift it so that as part of the dissertation, I wanted to get done. And one of the things I remember you telling me was, you know, you can make this as complicated as you want, but let's focus in on the hypothesis, whether it be qualitative or quantitative, and let's get those chapters written the way the committees would accept them and understand them and get done. And then if you want to come back and do a full-blown, you know, save the world research paper, have at it.
Right. And that's important to realize that there's the reason why you want to earn your degree. And usually that reason why has to do with you being out of school. Very, very few people are going to come to a doctoral student looking for help or expertise in anything. They're going to go to find a doctor to get that help or expertise if they want. So the idea of getting done is really central to what we do here at Dissertation Done. But so your dissertation process, you went through that. You graduated actually pretty quickly. Do you remember how long it took once you were actually working on your dissertation until you were able to defend and graduate?
10 months.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Now,
pretty good.
Those were tough 10 months, but I was on, you know, I was following a roadmap, and I'm a self-starter as a CEO and a co-founder of a successful company. And I like to go, okay, here's point A, here's the stops along the way, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5. Yeah. You gave me the personality of those when we would interact. And I also appreciated the fact that for the most part, I could pick up the phone, you would answer. If you had a conflict with your time, you'd say, Dave, I'll call you back at this time. Yeah. And it was always within 24 to 48 hours at a max. Usually it was in 2 or 3 hours. And that was my learning style.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
love it.
So what happened after you finished your dissertation? What did it mean for you to be graduated in terms of your business and your life beyond that?
Well, I don't want to say this in a disrespectful way, but one of the first things I realized after I decompressed and was able to go to a movie on a Saturday night after I graduated with my wife and no longer feel like there was something, why am I at the movie? I need to be on my dissertation. But after I graduated, I began to formulate a new value proposition based on the results of my dissertation. And I might add to your listeners that I actually had to get special permission from the university to actually do my quantitative dissertation on the subject that I had been making a living on for the last 20-something years.
So when you say you needed special permission, tell me a little bit more about that. What do you mean?
Well, I had to declare to the university that these are solutions that we've been using for years, and it's my intent to write my dissertation for the purpose of validating those solutions as part of the statistical analysis, or the analysis of what I suspected was a gap in the existing research related to the positive impact of having principals confident in attempting to modify contract employee, K-12 contract employee misconduct or behavior. I like to use the term behavior.
And those of us who run businesses know that there's a lot of things that we figure out kind of boots on the ground that isn't necessarily researched very well in the academic literature. And so you were able to sort of bridge that gap between something that we thought we knew through years of practice and then validating that in a methodical way.
And yes, and the unconventional piece of this that was the gift to me was that immediately I was closing contracts with school districts much faster. Instead of it being a 90-day closure window, we were dropping it to 4 weeks, average 4 weeks, but it was anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 weeks, average 4.
Wow.
To close the deal, because I was incorporating in my speeches at the state level for state departments of education and state school superintendents of all of the states, the validated results of what we did as part of the dissertation. And
so that's amazing. Tripling your close speed, basically your sales cycle, cutting it by a factor of 3.
Correct.
From 90 days down to 30 days, essentially.
Now, that's something that I did not anticipate when I decided to finish this bucket list 4 years prior.
And it's a great benefit. Now, one of the things that we were able to do with your dissertation, and this is something that folks who do operate their own business should consider if they're working on a doctoral degree, we were able to utilize contacts from within your company to shortcut that data collection process. We did not have to do a lot of wide-ranging recruiting because through your company, you already had access to the people that you were going to use to source that data. Is that correct?
Correct. And we went through the school superintendent associations of each state to reach the superintendents, and the School Superintendent Association recommended that their members in each state that we studied, 3 states, actually send the link on to take the survey to their principals. And in those 3 states you and I studied, we sent out over 9,800 invitations, and we got a ton of them back.
And it was not much more work to send out 9,800 than it would have been to send out 100 invitations or 50 invitations.
Exactly. But the way we did it, and this was one of your suggestions, was if there's an executive director of each of the state school superintendents that has a relationship with me over the 2.5 decades I'd been working with them, ask them to send the links out to their members. So we didn't send individually the links, they did. So we only had to send this to 3 executive directors of those 3 states, and then they just hit mail merge and sent it out across the state.
And then 10,000 people are contacted, and a whole bunch came back and responded.
Yes, so many that I called you all nervous and say, I hope you can help me with this.
Well, I have a story about a student that was actually trying to get her data collected. She didn't have a really good plan for recruiting, which is imperative. Anybody's working on your dissertation, make sure you know exactly where that data is coming from way early in the process of writing your dissertation. I mean, way early, like before you write a word would be great. But she got to that point where she didn't really know how she was going to get the data. She needed to work with mental health counselors. And so we started working together, and we found out that there were a couple of states that actually published contact information for all the mental health counselors. They were licensed by the state. They published their contact information. So we grabbed the list cold. We didn't have relationships like we were able to develop in your project, because this came to us late in the game. And we just said, let's try it. Let's see what we get. And we sent out, I don't know, a couple thousand or something like that, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 mental health counselors in these two states, just cold email in the morning, set it up so that they would receive it about the time that they should be drinking their cup of coffee at their desk before they start seeing patients. And we were shocked. She needed, I don't know, 150 or something respondents. We had that by lunchtime. And she had been working so long and hard on this for months and months and months and months and not getting anywhere. She just didn't believe it. And she wanted to keep the data flowing in and flowing in. So we let it go for 3 days. We got 1,000 respondents in a period of about 3 days, at which point she told me that the way that she got her data instruments, the surveys that they were going to be filling out, was that she had to agree to license it for $1 a respondent. So she needed 100 or so, 150. She got 1,000. She's supposed to be paying $1,000 now for these responses. And she said, do you think I should stop now? I said, yes. 3 days ago, I told you yes. So,
yeah.
So sometimes, when it looks like it's too good to believe, you want to keep it coming in so that you can be really, really sure. And she said, I don't know if that committee is going to tell me I have a problem with 150, but I'm sure they're going to tell me 1,000. So she was happy to get that number.
I liked the one of the recommendations that you had suggested and we discussed was that how we introduce the invitation to take the survey online needs to be of interest to the participant. Mm-hmm. And I knew from my prior research that and being a former school superintendent and principal, we just, as principals throughout the nation, we don't get any training in how to modify employee behavior. Yeah. They just, we're instructional methodology experts and things, right. But when it comes to modifying employee behavior, for years, it's always, if they violate policy, sting them. And that just wasn't the way I wanted to go. So we actually enticed them to take the online survey by letting them know that this was research that they had never really been introduced to during their graduate program to get their superintendent or principal certificate.
Yeah, set it up as a benefit to them. It's really interesting that you bring that up, because this other case that I was just speaking of, I remember the subject line for that email because it was a cold email. It was amazing how well it worked. But she was talking about religion in therapeutic settings. And I believe the subject line for that email was, does God belong in therapy? Something like that. It was a definitely in your face, going to catch your attention kind of headline. And I credit that, honestly, more than anything else that I did with getting those responses in. Because if we said some boring, hey, I'm a poor graduate student, can you please help me give me some data? that would have set unopened in the inbox for sure. But when you grab their attention and you make them think that this is something I actually want to be a part of, it helps a lot.
I know it sounds a little corny, but I mean this from the bottom of my heart. These are nuances that saved me money, that enabled me to expand the size of my of the larger group that I wanted to be representative of. And these are things that my committee, they never got into those types of things. Yeah. I mean, my committee was, and I'm sure I think mine, I don't think I'm special. My committee, it was good people, but they just didn't look at a dissertation the same way that you coached me to look at going about it. And I think it saved me months in the long run.
So we talk a lot on this podcast, and I talk with my students about the difference between a traditional and an unconventional doctoral student. And I kind of draw the line at traditional or like young kids that are 20 some years old, go into graduate school so that they can become professors. A lot of your committee members come from that traditional mold, and they don't think about there being another way to do things. And so they don't think about compressing time as being a goal at all. It's just not even, it doesn't register with them that that's a goal. So that's one thing that happens. I think another thing that happens is there are people who think, quite honestly, listen, this is your last chance to prove that you can do this stuff before you're out on your own. So it's kind of like the inspector or the driving test, whoever's going to proctor the driving test when you're getting your license for the first time. They're not telling you how to put the car into gear and when to stop and how to look both ways. They're just telling you to do certain things, and either you can do them or you can't. And if you can't, then you fail. And if you can, you pass. And that's not a wrong way of doing things necessarily. But the problem is that when you get to the dissertation, you haven't had someone instruct you really first. You didn't get all that time driving the car with mom or dad, them telling you do it this way, don't do it that way. And I think that's part of what coaching allows, is for you to go through the process with someone pointing this stuff out instead of just expecting that you'll figure it out one way or the other.
I probably talk to a half a dozen school superintendents a day, virtually. And there's never a week goes by that I don't really hear of a connection of someone that's in their dissertation or writing their dissertation. An hour before we signed on here, a gentleman from Mississippi, he said, "I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. We've closed the code writing thing, and we needed to schedule the days for it." And he said, "I'm sorry I've been delayed." He said, "I've been at Ole Miss and for a summer program. I'm in my third year of my dissertation." And he said, "It's just, I've been introduced to that again, and the stress is back on." And I can't tell you over the years since I graduated, how many people, I'll just say, "Hey, let me just send you a name if you really want your life back and you want to get this done." And I can't tell you how many people I'll talk to a year later and they'll say, I just didn't call and I'm struggling. And all that money that was spent during that time, rather than just go from point A to point B. And I don't want your viewers to think I'm being compensated to say these things. I don't have a script. You haven't offered me a penny. I just really—
Are you hinting?
No. I just really think that it's very beneficial if somebody wants to get her done.
And the thing is that at the point in our lives where all of the students that I work with are, the time is worth so much more than the money. I mean, it's to get, that's the thing that you told me when I asked you about the best part of graduating. You said, "I got my life back." And to get your life back a year or two earlier is, you can't put a price tag on that. But if you try to, your business improved dramatically once you started having these credentials and you could point back to the work that you had done. Is that right?
Yeah, but I need to state that I had a very successful business before I went to get my dissertation. The primary reason I went to get my dissertation was it was a bucket list. Yeah. And I was 54 years old when I started to get that dissertation. I've been working on these. We had the solutions in place. I had been doing unconventional research for years. And I was proving to the market out there, the K-12 market, that there was revenue at risk with our solutions. After I got into the program, though, and then when you and I started laying out the proposal and all of that, a little light came on, and I thought, well, why don't I take this to the next level and actually, instead of just accomplishing that bucket list, actually do something that's going to help my company. And it did.
And that's part of the reason why the fact that you bring up that the company was successful already, I'm assuming that, but yes, it was successful already. And that's why I stress hitting double and high double-digit growth on a successful, mature company is tough. It doesn't happen very often. Big superstar companies don't tend to do that. So that was an amazing accomplishment after you graduated.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was a nice, unexpected gift.
Nice bonus. And I'm sure if you decide to set that up for an exit, that's going to help out quite a lot when that revenue jumps up that high in a few years.
Yeah. Yeah. When I'm 100, I'm going to retire.
That's kind of when you do something you love, right? And my wife keeps asking me, what are you going to do about retirement? And I said, die. Why do you stop doing something you like when you're getting good at it?
Well, my wife asked me that too. And I said, well, I don't think I need to retire because my company is my mistress. And she looked at me for a minute. Russell, we've been married 35 years.
Yeah.
She's my best buddy. And she says, okay, you can have Upslope as a mistress, but only Upslope. So as long as they can roll me out in a wheelchair, I think I can speak for a lot longer.
And keep doing it. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Braswell, what would you say is the best thing? How has your life changed now that you've got this bucket list thing done? And again, whether that's business or personal or whatever it might be, what do you think was the most exciting or rewarding thing that you've been able to accomplish since you graduated?
Well, on a laughable note, I have realized that it's easier to have people listen to my solutions without having to convince them I'm right, just by having the title of Dr. Dave.
Absolutely.
My wife asked me that question over dinner one time, and she says, what's the one thing you've noticed now that you've got the title? And I said, I can come up with some pretty stupid ideas and they all still listen to me. Doesn't mean they're going to follow me, but the most exciting thing is walking into a room knowing that I can rattle off literature reviews, and there were hundreds of them, just off the top of my mind. And that adds value and credibility to what you're saying when you're speaking to a large audience, of which I do constantly. Right. The other thing that has been very surprising to me is that a lot of people look up to us as that 3% that has actually jumped through all those hurdles.
Right.
And I think that comes with a lot of responsibility to not only encourage people, if they have the desire to do it, that they can do it, right, but to also make sure that you're giving them good sound advice.
True. Because a lot of people, if your first name is Doctor, they're going to believe what you say. So Be careful. My wife will get upset about this with me sometimes, but I'll tell her I'm always right, because either I know what I'm talking about or I shut up. Yeah. I know the difference now. And so if you don't know what you're talking about, it's very important that you don't say something unless you're very clear that you're telling them, I don't know. Here's how we can think through that. Maybe this will work. If you're very clear about that, then it's okay. But if you're telling them that you know something, they're going to assume that you're telling them the truth and that you know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So, yep, very important. All right. Well, listen, Dr. Braswell, I want to thank you very much for being with us here today. I really do appreciate your time. How is it that folks who, maybe work in a school system or with a school district who might have need of learning how to, manage their employees' behavior and to set those expectations, how would they get in touch with you to learn more about that?
Well, they could go to our website, which is UpSlopeSolutions.com. UpSlope Solutions is one strand of sniglet word. They can call us on our 1-800 number, and that's 800-599-0350, extension 1, to get me. And they can email me at Braswell, that's D as in boy, BRASWELL, at Upslopes, UPSLOPES.com.
Awesome. And I heard the reference to sniglet in there. If you don't remember what that means, look it up.
A lot of your audience may not be old enough to know what that is.
A lot of them might. That one struck me about 2 or 3 words later. I'm like, wait, I know what that is.
Yeah. And it was first introduced as a regular word, I think, in the dictionary on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
25 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Braswell, thank you so much for joining us here today. Again, this episode was brought to you by Dissertation Done. And if you want to get your dissertation done as quickly and as stress-free as Dr. Braswell did, then reach out to us at dissertationdone.com.
This has been An Unconventional Life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe now to keep getting inspirational stories of unconventional lives as soon as they're released. Until then, go out and live your best unconventional life.